I want to acknowledge that we're meeting on the lands of the Kaurna people and particularly acknowledge their elders past, present and future. I'm going to focus on two things today. I'm going to focus first on the central ingredient of our ageing, which is our modern ageing, which is in fact our diversity. But then have a look and see whether there are some universal ambitions that we can draw from this work and learn from that. A quarter of all South Australians are baby boomers. A third of our population is aged over 50. And more than 50% of all voters at the last federal election were aged over 50. But if we focus just on size, on the size of the demographic, we lose focus on a much more important phenomenon, which is the diversity of modern ageing. The story of modern ageing is, in fact, if you know one older person, you know one older person. There isn't a voting bloc. There isn't a shopping block, there isn't a health block, there isn't an entertainment block, there isn't an eating block, there isn't even a technology block. And in fact, if you follow John Spear's work on the mature economy, where he's extended his lens across our region, the pressure to appreciate the diversity of our modern ageing becomes even more urgent. According to the US-based Frameworks Institute, we rely currently on two pretty limited stereotypes of our ageing. The first one is the throwaway generation, what they call the throwaway generation, which highlights only the negative experiences of older people, such as discrimination and abuse. And the second is the vibrant or independent senior narrative, which highlights so-called successful ageing, where individuals, through dint of their own efforts always, remain fit, well employed and empowered. And so while both of those stereotypes or both of those narratives have elements of truth, neither is anywhere near adequate to illustrate modern ageing. So let's have a look at what makes up our diversity. John Beard, who's a very proud Adelaide export and now the Director of Ageing and Life Course at the World Health Organisation, says that health varies between individual people more in older age than at any other stage of life. That shouldn't surprise us. There is no such thing as the average health of a 70-year-old. And in fact, what he would also say is that older age is the stage when a lifetime of relative advantage and relative disadvantage compounds and magnifies. Modern ageing is also characterised by cultural diversity. Almost a third of older Australians were born overseas. 20% of all Australians over the age of 50 are from culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds. And that proportion is growing and diversifying beyond the 10 countries we would most associate with called populations, Italy, Greece, Germany and so forth, to include older people and large numbers of older people from a wide range of much smaller communities, Cambodian, Fijian, Sudanese and so on. Our cultural diversity also embraces our Aboriginal elders. Indeed, I think from a South Australian perspective, the future health and longevity of Aboriginal people will be our ultimate judge of our claim about ageing well, whether we've over-egged indeed that claim of ageing well, because at the moment, on an Australia-wide basis, 71% of Aboriginal people die before they reach the age of 65. And older people are much more spread throughout South Australia than other age groups, and we saw that in some of the slides. More than 36% of older people live in rural South Australia, which means that our rural and remote areas have higher concentrations of older people than Adelaide does. 10% of older people identify as LGBTIQ, 59,000 people in South Australia. And people who identify as LGBTIQ are 2 times more likely to be single and live alone and 3 or 4 times more likely not to have children. And many will bring to older age experiences of past discrimination, harassment and bullying. Indeed, issues that are likely to be revisited in the event of a marriage equality plebiscite. And there's wealth diversity. While there's a lot written about a group of wealthy older people who own a large share of our state's wealth, and for many of those on the back of property investment, There are also increasing segments of older people who are poorer than we've seen in generations. They will be disadvantaged as they age because they will have little or no superannuation, little or no equity in a home, and increasingly may well face a long period of unemployment or underemployment in the lead up to the period of eligibility for an age pension. Housing has been an important buffer to the low rate of the Australian age pension, but home ownership rates among older people are dropping steadily, consistently, and without any sign of abating. Australia-wide, the number of over 65-year-old rental households will grow from 250,000 in 2008 to well over 500,000 by 2028. And a significant 50% decline in public housing stock and a change in priorities means that the public housing as a housing option will diminish in value for older people. And superannuation, of course, has made an enormous difference to the futures of many Australians and will continue to do so. But our compulsory super doesn't mature until 2030, and there are large groups of people, particularly women, who won't have the advantage of lifetimes of equal wages, lifetimes of complete work to have good super balances at the end of that time. And indeed, Hazel Bateman, and I think this points to one of the areas that we have potential to grow products and services in South Australia. Hazel Bateman from the University of New South Wales argues that low levels of financial literacy among many groups, and some women in particular, exacerbates that disadvantage. And then if we have a look at our employment profile as we age, it's also really important to understand that there are segments within that. We're all intending to work longer, though our labour force participation is growing all the time, and we're expressing intentions, including through the census, to work longer. But in fact, labour force participation declines very steeply from age, dropping from 74% of Australians aged 55 to 59 to 13% of those people over the age of 65. And indeed, new research from the ANU suggests that the people who will have left the workforce before the age of 62 are more likely to be women, who are poor with low levels of education, who are single, have adult care responsibilities and poor health. And indeed, the people who are still in the workforce past the age of 65 are more likely to be men who are wealthier, better educated, have a partner also working and in good health. So there are very different segments in those populations. Now, the purpose, I think, of reflecting on this diversity is to say that the modern ageing market won't be supplied into the future in the same way that we've supplied into it in the past. It is a bigger market than it's ever been before, and we've heard lots about that, but it's also really different and a very nuanced market. Part of proving our credentials as the state that leads the world in ageing well, and I feel very sure we will be to invent new solutions across this rich diversity. So are there some universal truths? There certainly seem to be. KPMG, as part of this preparation for today's event, has researched the wants and needs, as you saw some cameos of 800 plus over 60s, and identified 5 segments. There were distinct differences between those 5 segments in health and wealth profiles, in choice of leisure, in spending habits, in priority for volunteering, etc. But they also found some common ambitions among those 5 groups. The first was around technology users, and we have to be a little careful because there was an inherent bias, obviously, in the sampling because a substantial amount of it was conducted online. And so it's worth unpicking the relationship with technology a bit more. Chronological age inevitably plays a part in computer use. The first website went live in August 1991, 25 years ago. And that was toward the end of the working life of today's average 75-year-old. And many, in fact, left jobs at about that time that didn't use technology. And Facebook started in 2004, only 12 years ago. Again, many of today's 75-year-olds had well and truly left left workplaces where, in fact, most of our learning about technology seems to be happening. And I would argue that Brexit, the Brexit process, was a timely lesson for us all about the potential for fault lines to emerge, including digital inclusion and exclusion. But many interpreted those divisions as relating to age. I think closer inspection suggests that a lot of those fault lines, those divisions, are also about race, income, education and geography. As more and more Australians are expected to manage their needs online, difference in digital use is also important to understand. Almost all teenagers are on the internet, but only half of 65-year-olds are. The average 25-year-old has 300 plus friends on Facebook. The average 65-year-old has 30. And younger users source news, opinion, conversation, chats, commerce from social media. Older users are much more sparing in their use of technology for those purposes. And indeed, we must continue, I think, to invest in older people learning and accessing technology as one of our drives of an ageing well state, as we've talked about already a bit this morning, especially as an increasing number of online platforms give access to life's essentials. I think of banking apps, bill paying, transport like Uber, leisure such as through Airbnb, and most important of all perhaps, dating. Tinder, for example, now makes 26 million matches a day, and there's a generation of people who don't want to miss that opportunity. The second universal ambition is that older people want to contribute, be influential and be part of community decision making. In COTA SA, our work in regional South Australia certainly bears that out. Older people are equally impacted by the downturn in local economies and by job losses, but they're not always included in decision-making about the options to rebuild their communities. Older people in Port Augusta, for example, told us that they worry deeply about the lack of jobs and the loss of jobs because it means that their extended family, who they have an amazing exchange with of giving and receiving support, their extended families will need to move away from the town. And indeed, I reflect on KPMG's work about the importance of transport and physical access and look at some work sponsored by the Office for the Ageing here with the University of Adelaide researcher Helen Feast that found that older South Australians use their seniors cards to make 150,000 trips on public transport a week. And they don't use that to do functional activities of daily living. They use that to volunteer, to take in shows, to visit friends. Transport and physical access, as we heard very strongly in the video, are the foundations for ongoing participation. A third common theme among the people KPMG spoke to was about the need and the desire to invent and reinvent their lives as they age. There is an appetite for new discovery, for trying new things, for volunteering, for learning and for new work roles, which many people tell us remain somewhat unfulfilled. Indeed, a cameo segment that we've been fond of referring to in recent time has been over older entrepreneurs. Not all of our new enterprises, in fact, will be pop-up bars run by 30-year-old hipsters or start-up IT companies that 20-somethings invent. Some of our best innovation and small business leadership will be people like Steve-O of Steve-O's Diners at Newton, or Charmaine, who runs the best Mostly Books bookshop at Mitcham, or Pauline Lovell's home care company. Sometimes I think, we're a bit dinky when we start referring to seniorpreneurs and encore careers because it belies the fact that there is this, about a third of all small business in South Australia is owned by people over the age of 50 and has been for a long time. A fourth theme is increasing alarm among older people about the perniciousness of ageism. We've just surveyed our members, and for the first time in our many years of doing such surveys, ageism is singled out as a barrier to enjoyment and participation. We're also noticing a parallel trend, a mounting objection to perceptions of paternalism towards older people. And that new mood, I think, has brought about a great change in the way we deliver aged care. That it has been a major motivator in shifting to consumer-directed care, which, while still a fair way from putting the control of aged care in the hands of the people who use it, certainly steps us towards that objective and creates new opportunities for business in South Australia and well beyond. COTA SA has put the case for a South Australian Living Lab to revolutionise the engagement of older people in the governance and structure of research and innovation, moving the opportunity to be engaged from being lab rats to being partners. We think this is a major opportunity to create a point of difference in South Australia. We will be more inventive, as we've heard, if we involve older people in defining their own needs and working up solutions. Older people will buy that which they're part of inventing and that which seems to be addressing a problem that they declared. And older people, in fact, tell us that they see themselves as being part of the team that can take such technology and other devices to market. We visualise a Bunnings-style technology showroom staffed, in fact, by older people who are users of technology. Finally, KPMG found a resounding ambition not to be called old or elderly or senior or ageing. And it's not surprising. Old has virtually no redeeming features in our community now. Most of our reference points for what age is belong to the generation of our grandparents and our parents. Much as we love them or loved them, if that's what old is, we don't want it. One day, we may well wear our ageing with pride. COTA SA is very determined to learn from other social movements and, in fact, create an activism to change the way we think and do ageing, including through the arts. I love the work of Adelaide artist Peter Drew, who raises questions about the Australian identity through his Real Australians Say Welcome campaign and, more recently, his Real Aussie campaign. We can do a similar sort of thing. At COTA SA, we are redeveloping our own, currently very humble Every Generation festival so that it too can join in the challenging, teasing and creation of mischief with our stereotypes of ageing. The festival is part of our opportunity in South Australia to underline very progressive ambitions to rebrand old. We're in a unique position in South Australia. Our state government, with the cooperation of the business, academic and older communities, wants to embrace our ageing. We intend to leverage our ageing to create a new brand of old, and an experience of ageing that we will be proud to own, that we are desperately keen to aspire to, and that we can leverage to the max to grow our economy and to create jobs in this state. Perhaps it's too early in the trip toward owning our ageing to bring a Helen Reddy back for an I Am Old anthem, but I think we're headed in the right direction. And I do think, as a proud South Australian, perhaps Jimmy Barnes would be better at it anyway. Thank you.